Come on. All right. You should see the library, the college homepage. Yes. Okay. Good. Let me do one more thing real quick before we do this. Okay. All right. Okay. So if you're on the college's homepage, if to find the library's website, either go up to the search bar and type in library, and that will bring you up different links, or go down to the student services link, click on that, and then scroll down till you see library, click on that, and we'll take you directly to our homepage. You also have the option of just typing in our URL, library.roanstate.edu/home. Okay. So a couple things I want to draw your attention to. First of all, our spring hours. Because of COVID, we're doing things a little bit differently. So the physical buildings in Harriman and Oak Ridge are open limited hours, Monday through Thursday, 9 to 2. Virtually, however, we're open much longer hours. And by virtual support, what that means is there's a librarian available online to help you with your research during these days and hours. Because of COVID, we're not doing face-to-face this year. We are doing everything virtually, but there are multiple ways to reach us. If you look over on the left side, we have a menu. You click on contact, excuse me, you have the phone numbers to the libraries themselves. So if it's during our working hours, when the physical libraries are open, you can contact us, you can call us this way. You also have the general library email that you can use at any time. I also want you to note over here this Ask a Librarian widget. This shows up on most of our pages. This enables you to chat with a librarian in real time. So you type in your name, your question, hit your start chat, and then the librarian on the other side will then start chatting with you. We do have Zoom option with this. So if we need to see your screen, or if it would help you to be able to see what we're doing or see us face to face, we can set up a Zoom session instantly from this widget. You can also email us if you want to schedule a time to do a Zoom meeting. You can email us and ask for that as well. If it's after hours, when you click on this, you'll get a message telling you that. But it does give you the option of leaving us a message, and we will see that and contact you the next business day. All right, so going back to the home page. Before we get into actually evaluating your resources, I want to talk to you about your assignment. It's really important that you understand what your assignment is before you get started. All right, can you guys see the assignment paper? That's showing up? Okay. Let's just fix this again. Come on. Okay. Do you see it now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so here's an example of a English paper, assignment sheet. First thing you want to think about is make sure you understand what kind of paper you're writing on. Depending on how your class is done, your teacher may go over this in class, explain the type of paper you're doing, what they expect of you. Then in addition to that, or instead of that, you may have an assignment sheet. Be sure you read over it carefully. So first of all, make sure you know what kind of paper you're writing. This is an argumentative paper, says so right at the top. If you read the paragraph in the first paragraph, the teacher also goes on to explain what exactly she means by that and what she's expecting of you. So, in this case, she says you're working on a research paper, you need to make an argument about a real person you think should be celebrated or condemned. And then she goes on to make some other, explain a little bit further. It needs to be heavily researched. You need to talk about the person's life. You need to be telling me why this person's a good person or a bad person. So just make sure you understand that. Second thing you need to think about is make sure you understand what your topic is. Some professors will be will just say, just pick a controversial issue and argue with one side. Or they may give you very specific topics. Here's a list of topics you can choose from. Or here's a question you need to answer doing research. So make sure you understand what they want. And then lastly, make sure you know what kind of sources they are expecting you to use. If we look down at the bottom of this sheet, it says you have to use at least 3 separate legitimate sources. So she tells you you have to have at least 3. You can have more, but at least 3. And then just legitimate sources, as in no Wikipedia. Some professors are going to be a little more specific, and they may tell you, you have to use at least 1 book and 1 article and 1 website. Or they may say you can only use articles from scholarly medical journals. So be sure you understand what kind of sources you need to use, because that's going to impact how you do your research and what kind of sources you're looking for. But not only that, the teacher's going to be looking to make sure that you're following their directions, and that could impact your grade. All right, so just to sum this up, be sure you really understand what your assignment is. If your teacher's talking about it in class, take notes. If they give you an assignment sheet, go over it carefully before you even start. Okay, I'm going to let go and let Lindy take over. And Lindy is going to talk to you about how to evaluate the sources you find to make sure you are using those legitimate sources.
All right, thanks, Laura. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us. My name again is Lindy Wood King, and I'm going to take it from here for a little bit. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to turn off my video for this portion. So if I get frustrated with Zoom or something, you won't have to see me glaring at the screen. But let me see. I think you should see the Roane State library homepage now. Yes. Okay. So this is back at the library homepage that Laura, just gave you a quick overview of. To repeat what Laura just said in brief, you need to first of all understand what your assignment is, right? Before you start your research, that is critically important to know what types of sources you need and how many sources you need. As she mentioned, sometimes your instructor will give you very specific guidelines, like, you must use 1 book, 1 scholarly article, 1 journal, 1 newspaper article, etc. Other times they won't give you that detailed of instructions, but all of your instructors want you to use good sources, right? They want you to use accurate information. So that's always true no matter what the class is or what the assignment is. So the question then is, how do you know if something is good, legitimate information? And to be honest, that's something that can really take a lot of critical thinking. If you're looking at a potential source like a website or something from a newspaper or even a book, there's no one size fits all rule that you can use to determine if something is a credible source. You've really got to look at each potential source individually and assess its credibility as its own thing. When I was in school, there were rules like, I was told never use a .com website. They're all bad. That's not necessarily true. I also used to hear when I was in school that all .org websites were definitely good. They were fine sources. But that's not actually true necessarily either. Wikipedia is actually a .org site. So again, you've got to think about each potential source individually. And the library has some tools to help you do that, help you figure out how to evaluate information. If you go on the library homepage and then click the research tools link on the left, you'll see here at the top, we've got something called the research toolkit, which is made up of 4 separate modules. Module 3 here is the one that really dives into how to evaluate sources and select good, credible sources. So you can go through this at any time on your own time, and it gives lots of examples and details about how to evaluate information. In addition to that module, which, it's pretty detailed and it would probably take you 30, 40 minutes to work through it. So in addition to that, we also have a research guide on this topic. So if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see our Evaluating Information Research Guide. I'm going to show you that real quick. I'm not going to read over all of this. The idea is that this is here for you for your future reference. So if you are working on your research late at night and the library chat is offline or something like that, you might find a bunch of websites and be thinking, oh, are these okay? Are these legitimate? Will my professor be okay with these? And if you're not sure, and you don't have time to wait till the next day to ask the librarians, you can go to this research guide and it will give you some advice on how to evaluate sources. The tool that Heather and Laura and I usually use is called the CRAP test, C-R-A-A-P. If you've ever been in a library instruction session with us, you've probably heard of that. If you haven't been, you might hear about this in the future. It's a tool that provides you with 5 different criteria to consider when you're evaluating information. And here on this page, there's a video that talks about the CRAP test, and then there are all these different questions that you can ask yourself about a piece of information. Is it current? Is it relevant? And all these other criteria. But the 2 things that I want to really focus on, since we're making this a pretty short session today, I don't want to go through all of these. I want to really focus in on the question of authority, or who is the author of a source, and then purpose. Why was that source created? So think about who is the author and why did they create this piece of information. I say author, that doesn't necessarily mean one single person. Sometimes the author could be a group or an organization. You'll find that especially with websites. A lot of times websites you find won't have a specific person listed as the author. You would just say, if you found something from the American Heart Organization, you would association, you would cite them as the corporate author. But you want to figure out who the author is, and then establish whether or not they're an expert on this particular topic that you're researching. You want to check out their credentials, in other words. And you want to think about, again, what is their purpose? So I'm going to just show you some very specific examples here. This first example, I found it through the library. And this is a good time to mention that when you're trying to find good sources for an assignment, you can't necessarily just go to the library and use our search tools and then trust that everything you find will be okay to use as a source. That's not always the case. Even if it comes through the library, it might not be an acceptable source for a number of different reasons. So this example, this is an item that I found using the library's OneSearch tool. And I was just using, going along with our theme from yesterday, the civil rights era. So if you're writing a history paper about the civil rights movement in the 60s, Martin Luther King and other people like that, you could look for Martin Luther King, civil rights, something like that. And this is a result that comes up in OneSearch. It's one of the first results that I found for my search on the civil rights movement. It's labeled here as an article. And then it's got the title of this item. It's got the author name. And it tells you the publication that this thing came from is the American Historical Review, which, sounds pretty good, right? And you'll notice that it says peer reviewed. So this American Historical Review is a peer reviewed journal. But the issue is when you actually look at this item, if you can't tell already what this is, you can pull it up in the JSTOR database. And then you can actually see the full text over here. And you realize if you were to read over this, it's a book review. It's not actually the book itself. It's a review of a book called Pillar of Fire, America in the King Years, 1963 to 65. So, even if the author of this review, even if James Findley is an historian or a history professor, the purpose of this item is to provide a review of a book. It's not the book itself. So it talks about whether this book, Pillar of Fire, is well written, and well researched, but it's not actually, informing you about this time period. Not really. The purpose is to review a book. And by and large, when you're finding sources, book reviews are not going to be very helpful. So again, if you were writing a history paper, I would not use this as a source. It's not really giving you enough information on your topic. It's just a book review. In contrast to that, if you found something in the library like this, Becoming King, Martin Luther King Jr. and the Making of a National Leader, that's labeled as a book, and it's actually available in full text in this eBooks database. So, the purpose of this book is really to inform you in a lot of detail about MLK and the civil rights movement. So that would be an okay source to use. But again, book reviews, almost certainly not good sources. So anytime you run across those in the library collections, you generally will just ignore any book reviews. That's what I do. Another thing to watch out for, even if you're searching in the library collections, like I mentioned, you've got to still think critically about what you find. Let's say you're writing a paper about the civil rights movement and your professor says that it's okay to use newspaper articles. Well, you might search in a database and find something like this. The title is Violent Rioters Hurt Civil Rights Protests. It's got the author name, James S. Robbins, and then it says it's from USA Today. So you might be thinking to yourself, okay, I need a newspaper article. USA Today is a major newspaper. So you might think that, okay, it'd be fine to use this. But as you read over it, and I know, you don't have time to read over it right now, but as you read over it, there's a lot of kind of emotionally charged language in here. And there are some statements that are really just opinion-based. So reading over it, I'm thinking, okay, I might not use this as a source because I think the author's purpose in writing it is to provide his opinion. And sure enough, if you look down here at the very end of the article, it mentions James S. Robbins, a member of USA Today's Board of Contributors. And if you're not sure what that means, you can Google it. I Googled it. And the Board of Contributors is actually a part of the USA Today opinion section. So it's not the actual, it's not from the news section of the paper where they're just presenting the, hard news, just the facts, right? It's the opinion board. So yeah, there he is, James S. Robbins. So, he may be okay as an author and have some credentials, but his purpose when he's writing for USA Today is to share his opinions. And an opinion piece is different from just a straight news article. So that's something else that you got to be careful about. If your professor says newspaper articles are okay, you may want to clarify with them if they mean that opinion pieces from newspapers are okay. And a lot of times they would say no. So again, this is from the library. You might be able to use it in some situations, but then in other situations, it would not be acceptable to use because it is an opinion piece. It's not truly a news article. Outside of the library, if you turn to Google and type in your search and look for civil rights movement, lunch counter sit-ins or something like that, you're going to find a zillion results, right? Google gives you a ton of results. The vast majority of those search results will probably not be okay to use in a college level assignment. Again, there's exceptions, but my rule of thumb is generally to think that any website you find through Google is probably not acceptable unless you really look at it very closely and can argue why it should be accepted. But this example, history.com, any historical topic that you're researching for a history class, history.com is probably going to come up as one of the top Google search results. The problem with history.com, well, there may be more than one problem, but when we're thinking about authority and purpose, the authors of this page, this content here, I think some of them do have history degrees, right? I mean, they're paid to work for the History Channel and this website. And for the most part, I think they've got, a degree in history. But what is the purpose of the History Channel? Which is what this history.com is tied to. I don't know if any of you watch anything on the History Channel, but as I understand it, I think they're the ones who run shows like Ice Road Truckers or something like that. Ancient Aliens, there you go. Yeah, Christy, which sounds like a fascinating program, but the network that brings you the show Ancient Aliens really isn't the best place to get sources for your college level papers. History.com and the History Channel are really about entertainment, right? They want people watching their shows and going to the website and clicking on stuff because that generates revenue, right? They make money from it. So the content that you find here isn't necessarily, it's not necessarily all wrong, but it's probably going to be skewed to share, the most entertaining kind of information, right? To keep you watching the shows and then clicking around on the website. So a lot of times what I'll tell students is some of this stuff on here, this content may be accurate, but you can do a lot better, right? So just as one tip, I would say, do not use history.com for any of your history papers or projects you end up doing. I know a lot of Rome State history professors are very, very much against this particular site. And the reason is because its purpose is to entertain, not actually to educate. Another example that I found through Google is this page, ushistory.org. It's got a section here on the sit-in movement at the lunch counters in Greensboro, North Carolina. So, looking over it, you may be thinking, oh, this looks kind of okay. It is a .org site, which a lot of times, people think .orgs are definitely okay. Again, that's not always the case. But to figure out who actually made this site, who is the author or creator behind this page, you may have to look around a little bit. There's not a specific name on this page, but if you scroll down, you'll see that this website is owned by the Independence Hall Association in Philadelphia. So you could then Google Independence Hall Association to learn more about that group and figure out if they seem like a good authority. These ads on the page, they're not a good sign, right? If you see ads on a page, that should be like a red flag. It doesn't necessarily mean the site is bad. A lot of newspapers will have advertisements on their page. And again, sometimes you're able to use newspaper articles. So ads don't necessarily mean you can't use the site, but they're a definite red flag. And I mean, some professors will tell you, don't use any site that has ads. And then of course, you always follow what your instructor says. But even if they don't say that explicitly, you should still take the advertisements here as kind of a warning sign, like, do I really want to use this in my college paper? And then what you can also do is, like I said, you could scroll down here and see who owns the site, this IHA Association, Independence Hall Association. You could Google them, or you could go to the homepage of this website, which is just ushistory.org. And look around there and see if you can find more information about this group. And there is from here, you can get to a who we are or who are we page that tells you about this group. My issues with this page as I'm looking at it, it looks like the author or creator behind the website, the IHA, it's a group of concerned citizens who were just trying to get a national park founded. That was the original purpose of this group. So it's not actually a group of scholars necessarily. It's more of a volunteer organization. It's a nonprofit, so they're not trying to get rich off of this, but they're mostly volunteers and concerned citizens who just want to share their enthusiasm for local history, there in Philadelphia. If you look at their board members, I won't read over all of this, but they've got an About Us section, and they talk about their president and vice president. If you read over these bios, they're not actually historians. They are, this first guy has degrees in business and engineering. And it talks about how history is sort of just a passion of his. It's sort of a hobby. So again, not really the best source. I'm not saying that all of their content is wrong, but you could do a lot better. This is more something you could probably get away with in middle school, maybe even high school, but at the college level, you can find something much more academic than this. Such as this last example, I'll show you another site that I found through Google when looking up the sit-ins in the 60s. It came from the King Institute, kinginstitute.stanford.edu. So this is from a university, and more specifically from this institute within the university. And when you look at who's behind this institute and who created this encyclopedia here about MLK, it's not just a bunch of concerned citizens or volunteers. Let me go here. They've got this page about their staff, and you can see that the director of this organization, of this institute, has got a lot more credentials that are really specific to history and to, even more specifically, the civil rights era and Martin Luther King. So you can kind of drill down and see this guy has a ton of credentials. He's written books. He's won awards. He's taught at a lot of different universities. So he has a lot of authority. And the purpose of this encyclopedia at the King Institute really is just to educate, and you'll notice they don't have a lot of ads on their page. So again, that ads are something to watch out for, and they're kind of a red flag. And this page, in contrast to the other one, does not have any. So I would say that this would be the better source to use as opposed to that other one. But again, you've got to look at each potential source on its own and think about who created it, and what was their purpose in doing so. Our Evaluating Information Research Guide can help you figure that out. But if you find yourself stuck and you're still not sure, if you find a website and you're like, is this okay to use or not, just reach out. Laura showed you how to get to the online chat. You can also email the library or give us a call, and we'll be happy to help you figure that out, if the source is acceptable or not. I'm going to turn things over to Heather. I think you're just going to wrap up. I think we've got the form link to share the feedback form. Yeah, thank you all. And I'll turn off my share here, but does anyone have any questions? Or thoughts? Oh, it looks like somebody had asked a question in the chat. Thank you, Laura, for taking that one. Yeah, and there's
thank you for doing that. No questions? Okay, well, we thank you so much for coming, and if questions do arise later, please do let us know, and we're here to help. And we thank you for coming. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. It was good to meet you all.